Hi, I'm Raul Torres, and I'm the creator of this channel called Come Together. And the reason I created this channel is I would love for people to come together and unite in the fight for working class people. Uh, I believe we've been abandoned by both parties, the Democratic and the Republican Party, and we need to get back to doing things that enhance the lives of the working class rather than the rich. And I'm coming at it from a place of knowing what I know and maybe getting some feedback from you on what you know to possibly help create a way and move forward so that we can live a better life. Um, so, just to give you a little background on me, um, I grew up in a working class family, blue collar. My dad was a steel worker. My mom was a steel worker up until about 1980, 81, when computers came in because she was in keeping. Computers came in and kind of basically took her job from her. And so she was laid off. My dad was in a steel mill, and he actually retired from the steel mill. But he worked in the steel mill till uh, he could retire. But he had went through some layoffs. I remember him going back to school when I was a teenager. He was trying to get a business degree, but ended up going back to the mill because financial reasons. Because he was laid off. But my parents were both working class. Uh, I graduated high school in 1988. I went to college right out of high school. Um, and after the first semester, I dropped out. Well, I basically dropped out through half the semester, right? And then took about a year off. Went to went to work, working fast food, and I was a teenager, still a teenager, not making any money. So I decided to go back to school to get um, my education so that I could get a better job. Now, I wanted to go into psychology at the time. I started going to a local university in where I live. I live in Northwest Indiana. I started going to Purdue. At the time, it was called Purdue Calumet. Now it's called Purdue Northwest. But I started going there, and I was doing really well. I met my first wife, and we became pregnant with our first child. She, of course, was pregnant. I just helped get her there. But, anyways, I just want you to know kind of where I come from. So, she was pregnant. We decided to get married, and I decided I needed to go back to work full time. So I found a full time job because I had a kid coming, and I wanted to provide for my family. And so I ended up dropping out again. But because my grades are so good, even with me dropping out, I still passed and got some college credit in two of my classes. Um, so then about a year later, I had worked, a couple part-time jobs to try and make ends meet for my family. I tried to go full-time, but my wife had a C-section at the time, and I had to like help because she couldn't really get up in the middle of the night to feed the baby or change the baby or deal with the baby crying, which the baby was my son Nick. But ended up losing my full time job. So then I had part time jobs for about a year, and I had applied while I was at that full time job because it didn't pay as much as I thought it should. I applied at a steel mill, um, and I got a job a year later at a steel mill called Acme Steel. It was in Riverdale, Illinois, and worked there for, almost 14 years. And then they closed. What happened was, at the time, there was an influx of foreign steel into the country from the Ukraine. And my steel mill, I worked under Acme Steel, the umbrella of Acme Steel, and the division that I worked under was the strapping division. And we had actually bought that cheap steel from Ukraine. But the parent company, Acme Steel, who actually made steel, you would think that the strapping division would buy steel from their parent company, but because they saw a way to make more money quicker, they decided to buy this cheap steel, which I remember at the time that everybody on the line complained, meaning the production lines, slitting the steel and painting it, complained about that steel, saying it was no good. And we had actually had, like, I don't know, hundreds of coils come back to us that were just returned because they weren't good enough. But anyways, Acme filed bankruptcy because of, they claimed, uh, the influx of foreign steel was killing their business. So therefore, they're filing for bankruptcy. Okay, so our division was included in that bankruptcy. What ended up happening, our division got bought by our competitor, and we were a union company. I was at a union. I was in United Steelworkers of America at the time. And the company that bought my division was a company called ITW. And they owned our competitor at the time because we made steel strapping. They bought our competitor, which was Signode Steel, and they make steel strapping for, like, banding up pallets and coils and just packaging stuff. But they were a non-union shop, and after they bought it, everybody was talking about the fact that Signode was non-union, and do you think that's going to affect us in the long run? Well, it did, because ITW decided they didn't want to pay the union wage. They'd rather pay the non-union wage, which, if you're a company and you're trying to make profit, I guess that would be the route to go. And our company, our division folded. Now, and this is what kind of woke me up to, and I use the word woke, W-O-K-E, woke. It made me aware of what the hell matters to these companies. And what matters to these companies is the bottom line. Not understanding, well, maybe they do understand, but just don't care, that the working people like me and the other people who worked at that steel mill had families, had homes, and they all had to support those families and pay for those homes. They didn't care that that was the case, because it was cutting into their profits. Now, there's nothing wrong with making profits, but it shouldn't be at the expense of your workers, the people who got you to those profits. Without your workers, how can you make your products? And that's when I started to wake up to the fact that these corporations don't give a shit about me or you. Um, and if you think they do, just kind of look at what's going on today. You know, uh, how many people are getting laid off today because of AI? If the companies really gave a shit about you and I, they wouldn't implement AI. They might. An economist, it's like the example. If these companies really gave a shit about you and I, what they would do is say, "Hey, we're going to use AI to make your job better. Instead of working 8 hours a day, you work 4 hours a day because AI has enhanced your job so much that you don't have to work 8 hours a day. You only have to work 4 hours a day, which gives you more time with your family, gives you more free time to do your hobbies or whatever." The company is still going to make their money because you're just being more productive because of the assistance of AI. But yet, that's not what happens. What happens is instead of doing that, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we're going to lay off. We don't need 50% of you because AI has increased your work production by 50%. We're going to lay off 50% of you. And then the other 50% still have to work 8 hours a day. And they're still making the same money. They're still making the same profit. They're still doing the same amount of production. But they feel that they're eliminating some overhead when what they did is basically ruined some people's lives, basically. People say, oh, you could just go get another job. Well, it's happening all over, and it's happening today. So this is one of the reasons why I decided to do this channel, is because of that reason. Well, anyways, let me get back to my story about, about me. So I got laid off. They furloughed us. They let us go because that company, Signode, was union or non-union, and we were union, and the overhead would be less. Okay, so they laid us off. So I was out of a job. So I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? Well, when we got the news, it was like a year after they had taken over our company. They had come to the employees, which was good that they announced it to us. They said, in a year, we're going to be shutting this company down, and you're going to need to figure it out. Okay, so everybody knew a year ahead of time that the company was shutting down. So they had time to get their ducks in a row to get out of there. Well, I had said to myself, well, I can't go to a 4-year school because I ain't got 4 years to go back and get educated, because I had no education because I dropped out of college twice. I didn't have any skill sets that would be desirable to any employee except for my labor. And I had already been through the whole labor thing and depending on a company to, make sure that I was securing a job. So I didn't want that. I didn't want to go back to a steel mill. I didn't want to go back working for a company like that, to be depending on someone else. So I was gonna, say, well, what do I need? What can I do in the short amount of time that I have to prepare for this layoff? What can I do? So at the time, real estate was booming, and I had a friend who was in real estate. And I said, well, how did you get into real estate? He goes, well, I studied for their test, took their test, passed it, and got my license. And now I work for this broker. Okay. Well, it cost $800 just to take that test. All right. So I had to borrow the money for that test from my mother and father-in-law. And after I got laid off at the mill, I went and took the test. I got my real estate license, and I went to work for a broker. Well, when you work for a broker, most realtors in in Northwest Indiana have to be part of what's called the MLS. You're real part of the Realty Association, right? Which is just a bunch of realtors get together and pool their money, and they can lobby for political stuff, for running the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, which actually has the houses stored on the internet so that people can view them. Um, that was about $1,000 a year each year to do that. Plus, every 2 years you had to go back for what they called CE, continuing education, and each class, I think it was like $200 for each class, and it was only like a 3 credit course within the Realtors Association. Well, that's fine, you know. First couple of years I was doing it, so I started in 2013. The mill closed 2014, and so I was involved with real estate, selling houses, and then the real estate bubble happened. So then I'm not selling houses, I'm not listing houses because the only houses that are being listed are the houses that are being foreclosed on, and they're being listed by a bank. And we did have some of those, but how I was making my bread and butter during that time as a realtor, my broker at the time, which I won't say who the broker was, uh, basically employed me to go and do these, they call a broker prepare analysis, a BPA. And basically, it the banks call and say, "Hey, we would like you to do some BPAs for us on these properties that we just foreclosed on, so we know what their value is." And a broker prepare analysis and analyzes all of the homes that are around that house. And it goes by square footage, bathrooms, all of that stuff, and then does a comparison of houses that sold, and it tells the bank what that house is worth. So I was being basically employed by my broker to go out and do these BPAs because they were getting, man, I must have did 4 a week for months. So I go out and take pictures, take measurements, do the analysis, turn it into my broker, and she would give me, I think she was paying me at the time $40 per BPA. So 4 a week, that's not a lot of money, but it was something, some sort of income coming in. So then I decided to do my son. He was going into freshman in high school at the time. And I played football in high school, and I really liked it. And he went out for the football team. So I went to a practice of his, and something happened. A kid got hurt, so I went over to assist with practice while they attended to this kid. And then the head coach asked me if I would be willing to come on as an assistant coach for high school football. And I was just ecstatic because I love football and get to coach it. Great. So I was a football coach, but then, with all the stuff going on with real estate, which, like I said, I was doing the BPAs, I needed more income. So when I was doing the football coaching, they had an exchange student program, and the coordinator of the exchange student program was trying to find a home for one of the students. And I wasn't making a lot of money, and she approached me about maybe possibly taking him in. And I explained to her my situation as far as like not making money, a lot of money, and I don't know that we could afford to bring him in. But at the time, her mother was the substitute teacher coordinator. So she would call the substitute teachers, the subs, whenever they needed a sub and have them come work. She goes, well, I tell you what, my mom, she does substitute teaching. She goes, if you take these in, I'll talk to my mom and see if she'll keep you working. Do you have some college education? And I did. So I applied. They did an interview with me and they hired me. So I was a substitute teacher right after that. And then we kind of went away from real estate because nobody's making money. Put my license in what was called, I forget what they call it, but it was like somebody holds their license for you until you can go back and do it again. But you still have to pay for your continuing education in order to keep your license. And I didn't have the money to do it, so I just let my license go, basically. But I was doing the substitute teaching. I really enjoyed substitute teaching. Believe it or not, I really enjoyed teaching kids. It was great. So I decided I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to become a teacher. And at the time, they were struggling at the school that I was substitute teaching. They were wanting they were having trouble keeping Spanish teachers. So I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to speak Spanish and learn Spanish. Maybe I'll go to school and become a substitute teacher or a Spanish teacher. So I went back to school, went back to Purdue, started in their education program, and was taking the classes in order to become a Spanish teacher. But then, like, I don't know, I would say more than halfway done, I started to realize, man, I'm not retaining this Spanish like I should. How am I going to teach these kids Spanish when I can't retain it myself? And I talked to my professor about that, and the professor basically said, well, you'll learn it once you start teaching. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to be teaching and learn? It didn't make sense to me. So I changed my major from Spanish teaching to social studies because I really like history and I could do that. So I did. But then I had a friend who had just graduated and had his degree in social studies teaching. That guy could not find a job anywhere with his degree. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, now what am I going to do? So I looked at the curriculum at Purdue and found out the programs that would all my credits that I've already gotten would transfer over to so that I could graduate because I was getting close to graduation. But I wanted a degree in something that possibly I can make some money at right away. Something that wasn't going to be just a piece of paper. It was going to be something I could use actually to gain gainful, good, sustained employment. But the only thing I saw was advertising, and I've always been into business. I like business. I think I have a good head for business. I was in a club in high school called DECA, which is Distributive Education Clubs of America, and it was basically a business class. Anyways, so I found that interesting that my credits would transfer over to the advertising degree at Purdue. So I did that. I changed my major to advertising, and that's what I graduated Purdue Calumet in 2014 with my degree in advertising from Purdue. Okay, post Purdue. Send out, I don't know, I must have sent out over 350, 400 resumes. I've got 2 hits. I got 2 phone interviews, one in Ohio, and I think the other one was in Chicago for a job, entry-level position at an advertising firm. Well, I got the dreaded, well, we've decided to move on with another candidate, right? That letter. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I had already been driving while I was going to school. I've been driving for a courier. And I was doing that. So I had been driving. And then I got myself in at the job that I currently do, working part time as a casual driver for Bearing Headquarters. That's the company that I work for. Driving whenever they needed me, so back to part time work, right? This is a really long story, but I'm only trying to set the stage for kind of how I want this channel to go. It's basically me trying to figure things out with you, and maybe we both get an education on how to move forward. But anyways, so I was doing that. Well, I wanted full time work, man. Just struggling, not making a lot. So with my education, I had taken a lot of psychology classes because of the education part of my education, or my learning. And the Department of Child Services in the state of Indiana was hiring, looking for case managers. And I applied for case management down in Lafayette, Indiana, and interviewed, got the job. And I was so happy. And it paid pretty good, you know. So I had to, my wife was working a job here in Northwest Indiana at the time. We moved from Northwest Indiana down to Lafayette. She found work down there, working at the BMV, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. So now we both work pretty much for the state. Although she worked for an outside contractor that worked within the state, but we were both state employees basically. And so I became a case manager. Went through all their training because I had to go through, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks of training to become a case manager, because all of my credits for psychology helped me get that job. Uh, so I became a case manager. I enjoyed doing the case management. The only thing that was really difficult for me, and that's just because of lack of training and everything, was uh, the paperwork, all the paperwork involved with case management. You've got to submit paperwork to different outside contractors that worked with the state to help people, whether that's psychologists, doctors, uh, uh, like case management workers that help with the families. You had to, and then you had to document everything, and you had to submit it to the court. Anyways, I was having trouble with knowing the timelines of when that paperwork's due and everything like that, and just became a big thing. And basically, my manager at the time was not supportive, and basically said, "Well, I don't really have time to train you." So it was like, either you figure it out on your own or you're out. But he was really cool, and he was like, "Well, probably the best thing for you to do, because you're having this little bit of struggle, and I don't have the time to train you, would be see if you can find work outside, maybe as a contractor who works for DCS, um, maybe somewhere out there doing a job like that." So I found a place, actually, and the place paid like double what I was making at DCS. Um, so I'm like, yeah. So I started doing that, and then COVID happened. Now, the particular job that I had outside of DCS as a contractor, uh, I used to shuffle parents to go see their kids, basically cart them in my car, take them wherever they're going to see their kids, and then bring their kids back. And the whole time I have to document, write like what I see, how they interact with their children, any problems that I can see or whatever. I had to submit it to a DCS case manager, and they could submit it to the court as evidence in the court case for the family, whether it's good or bad. So I was doing that, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, when they shut everything down, the only way I got paid as a contractor was if I was face to face with the clients. And not being able to be face to face with the clients, only doing it through like a Zoom call or whatever, we weren't getting paid for that. So it was January of 2019, and I looked at the bills that were coming in, and I looked at what I was making, and I told my wife, I said, we can't sustain. I said, we're going to have to figure something else out. And I told my wife, I said, we need to maybe go back to Northwest Indiana and stay with my parents until we can get on our feet, because yeah, we were not going to be able to sustain our life down there because of the rent and everything like that. So we moved back up to Northwest Indiana. I went back to driving because they have your name on a list of drivers that they could call, and they knew that I was in Lafayette, but I kept my name on their list of drivers. And there was, they, in order for them to hire, they go off that list. Whoever's at the top of the list, they offer the job to them first, and then next. And so we moved up there knowing, I knew that one of the drivers was going to be retiring. And I was at the top of the list. So I thought, well, I'm going to be at the top of the list. When that guy retires, it's my job. So we spent about a year and a half up there, and he finally retired, and now I'm here full time, which is great. But just all of the baloney and BS that I've been through as far as in the workforce, a lot of it has to do with one thing, and that's greed. Really. These companies don't care about their employees. Even with the state of Indiana, they didn't care about me. Because if they did, they would have actually trained me properly so that I could stay on and work. But they didn't. And anyway, so I got this job, and now I'm here, and now things are going crazy in our country. As far as like just our economy, the laws that are being passed, this new bill that was passed, the big beautiful bill, which isn't so beautiful for us working class people. But how do we get it back? How do we get our lives back? How do we make a living? Now, me and my wife, we both work. We both work. Last year, me and her together made about $82,000 a year, and guess what? It's still not enough. Our mortgage payment has skyrocketed to over $1,500 a month because insurance costs have gone up because of all that flooding. So insurance companies, instead of paying out what they need to pay and taking the loss, they put the loss onto us as customers, and we pay for that. So they never lose. We lose. They never lose. Now, it's unfortunate that those people lost their homes and everything in those floods. But the insurance company, that was the risk that they took. There's no guarantee that you're not going to have to pay out. And that should be the risk that they take by being an insurance company. All these people put their money in, and it's not really, when a big disaster like that happens for an insurance company who sells stock, it's not sustainable for them because they have to be beholden to their stockholders and they have to show a profit, and that's not what's happening. So who pays for it? We do, and these insurance companies don't. They just keep making a profit, and the stockholders keep making a profit. But anyways, that's what this channel is about. It's just about me, my situation, and you and your situation, and coming up with ideas and, talking about the issues. Maybe there's people out there that have ideas that would help improve things for the working class. I think politically we have to come together also to look out for one another as far as working class goes. I don't care if you're right wing or left wing, whatever. We have to come together as working class people and stand up for each other. We can have different views on different things, but as far as our jobs and our work and our livelihoods, we need to come together on that and be strong and solid and say, we're done with this, rich getting richer and we get poorer. That doesn't make any sense. It used to be that when a company hired somebody, they had to take into consideration the fact that, okay, I'm going to hire this person. They're going to make this much money. I'm going to make this much money. The company's going to make this much money. We have to benefit each other because that's the only way it's sustainable. The other way, like, you're laying off people. People don't have jobs. They can't afford to buy stuff. So you're basically shooting yourself in the foot by laying people off, because now the people don't have the money to buy the things that you're selling. So how do we fix that? Now everybody's talking about AI, how AI is going to take jobs, and why don't we use AI to alleviate some of the stresses and pressures of jobs and just keep making the same profits and sharing in the profits? It's just my opinion, but I believe that any company that sells stock is a company that is doomed for failure. And the reason why it's doomed for failure is because now you're beholden to the stockholders. You have to pay them. They are considered a debtor or a creditor. They give you the money and you're supposed to give them money back, right? But if you ain't making any money because of whatever, tough times, and they want their money, you have no choice but to give them their money. And if that means filing bankruptcy and going broke and paying them off, and then all of your workers and all of the people that you employed are out of a job and basically screwed, so be it. So I don't believe the stock market is a good thing. I think the stock market basically ruins the integrity of a business, because now you can't base your company's profit losses on actual things, but which is why they keep projecting, which is why the prices keep going up. Inflation goes up higher and higher because you have to keep making a profit in order to pay off your stockholders. Anyways, that's my tangent on that. Maybe somebody else can enlighten me on all of that, but that's just my feeling on it. But I'm going to have a live stream this evening, and I hope you'll join me, and maybe we can talk about these things in depth a little more, and maybe come up with come together and come up with some solutions that we feel that we can accomplish. That's my goal with this channel. And like I said, I hope you'll join me. I'm open, like I said, right, left, doesn't matter. As long as you're working class and you understand what I'm talking about, come join me and let's talk about the things and what can we do to improve our situation, whether it's politically or through our almighty dollar. Okay, well, thank you for listening to me blah 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 about my life and about me. And like I said, I hope you join me tonight. So everybody have a great day, and I'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. Central. Bye.